Welcome, everybody, to the Banking on Innovation podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Liz Wolverton at Synovus Bank. Liz is the head of consumer banking and brand experience at Synovus. Liz, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jody. Glad to be here.
So, Liz, you and I met about 3.5 years ago for the first time, and we've had lots of exchanges and interactions since, but it sounds weird to say that I think we only met again live at the digital banking event recently in Austin in June. I guess that's a function of the remote world we're in today.
It is. It's crazy. You know, that was such a good event because you could feel the energy in the room. A lot of these people connect you, and just like you and I, over 3 years, gosh, we've connected a lot. We've participated on a lot of events together, but seeing each other in person, there's just something awesome about that. And the energy there was great. And it was good to see you.
You too. Yeah. So Liz, you've had such an impressive career at Synovus Bank over the past 20 years. In your current role, you have enormous responsibility over consumer banking products, marketing, digital, the branch network, and analytics for the bank. You've been named one of American Banker's Women to Watch, 25 Women to Watch every year since year 2015. What have you found about banking that's been so engaged for you? And how have you had to reinvent yourself throughout your career as well?
Oh, it's a loaded question, but I think the environment has offered me a lot of opportunity because it's continued to change. I didn't grow up a banker, I like to say, although now that you say it, for 20 years since I've been one, I guess I have to claim it. But I didn't grow up a banker, and I think the fact that coming into banking unexpectedly, and that's another story, but coming into banking unexpectedly, I had a naivety that I brought that really brought a lot of questions with, why are we doing things? Why are we doing things the way we're doing it? What if we thought about this? And I say naivety because I think looking back at some of the questions that I asked, a bit with kind of abandon, I'm a bit embarrassed by it now. But I didn't worry about asking a lot of questions when I first entered into Synovus and into banking. And so I think that the environment itself has continued to change. So whether that was back in 2010 when the crisis hit and the crisis required banks to do a lot of adjusting, to the dynamics of an emerging digital environment, to COVID, I think I've had a lot of opportunity to continue to reinvent myself because adaptation has sort of been the name of the game in order to keep the business viable.
What a remarkable personal journey. And with regards to Synovus has actually been in business since 1888, and over the last few years has enjoyed very strong growth, 24% asset growth since 2019, is now over $55 billion in assets. What do you think are some of the keys to Synovus's enduring business model?
Yeah, so, I mean, at the heart of everything, and, I say this very proudly, Synovus is a bank that is truly focused on the customer and relationship with the customer, but relationships internally. I mean, the culture that the company has developed and is proud of and protects is one that, puts team members and customers first. We certainly have shareholders that we care for, but we have a firm belief if we put team members and customers first, that the other falls into place. And so I do think that that's generated a sustainability through hard times, customers that stay with you because they trust you, team members that work hard for you, that again will do the things that they need to do in hard times and will work to win in the good times. I think that's all based on culture. I think another part of the culture that has helped Synovus succeed in the past and into the future as well is a culture of innovation. And that's it may be a word that we've adopted, but the old term for us was entrepreneurship. And that's something that we've always had a heart for. As a bank that grew out of small bank acquisitions, one of the big things that was an important part of our model was that as we brought banks in, that we didn't just try to homogenize who they were. We wanted to have cultural alignment, but one of the things that we liked about having the leadership that we retained in our bank acquisitions, and that we still retain a localized, management model, is that entrepreneurship was so important to bring ideas, to bring challenge to the table. And certainly for me, I've benefited from that spirit because I always feel like whether it's something that sounds completely, off the rails, that I have the ability to kind of provoke different ideas and dialogue. So, it sounds very cliche to say it's culture, but I think we've got the proof points to say that the culture has really driven both the dynamics of customer loyalty, team member loyalty, and then that entrepreneurship that have continued to evolve the bank over time.
Yeah, well, you've really been able to demonstrate it as part of the enduring model. You alluded to the environment that we're in, and it is a fascinating period. We have rapidly changing customer expectations, new competitive threats and traditional threats as well, and then massive growth, of course, in digital behavior. And I'd like to get your take on each of these, given your unique perspective, Liz. So let's start with customer expectations, since that's where we should always start. So research suggests that customers are expecting more from their banks. How do you believe that customer expectations of their bank is evolving, particularly in light of today's challenging environment for households?
So we talk a lot about this. And actually, we have a presentation or a discussion with our board in a couple of days where my chief digital officer and my head of marketing will be really provoking the conversation about customer expectations when it comes to relationship. And I think, some of the tests and checklists that banks have done over the past several years have been, do you have digital feature and functionality? How many clicks to go? How many clicks until a task is completed? Is the interaction seamless? Is it frictionless? And those are all things that you have to have. But I think you and I both know that the customer expectation has evolved well beyond, is this easy to do? But what else is it doing for me? I've quoted several times in several discussions the very evident and obvious kind of territory where customers are evolving their expectations for banks, being the J.D. Power, recent survey where customers were asked, and I'm going to misphrase the question, but substantially, how big a role, how important is it that your bank improves your financial condition? Not, can I trust my bank? Not, did the bank make it easy for me to make this deposit, but did they truly improve my financial condition? And over 80% of respondents placed a level of importance there for the bank. That is a new bar, I think, for us. It shouldn't be a new bar, right? Because we always should be aiming for that. But I think the customer expectation is, you're going to do more for me than just service the transaction that I present you with. And I think that is really kind of the big one, Jody.
Such a great point. I always remind myself, if the environment that's surrounding you and the customer's needs are changing faster than the dynamics at your bank, then it usually means there's trouble ahead. And we certainly see that in terms of the customer expectations evolving so quickly. So let's move on then to the competitive environment, Liz. Synovus is buffeted by massive super regionals and national banks on one side, and then also challenger entrants on the others. How can regional banks, such as Synovus, that have a strong relationship model, continue to compete in this evolving environment?
Well, I think recognizing the expectations and having a strategy that's matched to it is obviously job number one. And I say it seems obvious, Jody, but I think so many banks today aren't thinking as deliberately as they need to about the changes that need to be made. I'm proud that on our executive team, because it can't just be me, it has to be a cohesive and aligned executive team that is strategically positioning the bank with the right investments, that we buy in to this direction, because it's going to require effort, both, monetary resources and then organizational resources geared to addressing some of the new and I would say continuing competitive evolutions in the market. But I think that one of the biggest things for us has been the willingness to partner to deliver. So as the customer's expectations evolve, and that includes everything from just increased digital capabilities to maybe thinking differently about some of the other experiential things that you need to have within your product solutions and relationships. There are a lot of fintech partners that can really accelerate your ability to deliver. And, the old sort of thinking for banks was, be very linear in how you deliver, be very corralled in your vendor relationships. Within an experience, don't try to put 4 and 5 pieces together, because that can be disastrous. And, I think one of the things that we've done, and our head of technology, Zach Bishop, is helping to position as well, is focusing on that infrastructure modernization that allows us to in a very different operational risk environment, deliver with multiple partners. So I think partnerships and the evolution of who's out there to partner with, and the improvement that has been made in fintechs in the past 5 years has been phenomenal. Our ability to partner and deliver pretty rapidly with them is as much about our maturity as it is about theirs. And so the short answer to your question about what is one of the ways that Synovus can compete, it's to partner and to be open to that. And I think that's served us very well.
It's a really interesting way to think about it, with the national banks and some of the biggest banks having billion-dollar technology budgets, the banks that are in the middle market really being savvy around developing an internal kind of maturity model to create an ecosystem of partnerships, as well as then fintechs having to raise their game so that they can complement the bank's assets more effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And the types of things we're having to partner on today really get a bit personal. And I know you and I talk a lot about personalization, but these are areas of the relationship. So whether that is through insights or whether that's through some other customer touch point, when you start to invade the space of the customer relationship, I think that's where banks get very, obviously for good reason, protective of how many people they're going to allow into that equation. And I do think that fintechs are now more mature and can better fit to be a part of that relationship model, discussion and get the credibility, to be part of that delivery.
Yeah. Fascinating. So on the third point, this whole, what you've been speaking of is the customer shift to digital behavior. So for middle market banks like Synovus, what are the key areas to invest in and deliver on to not just meet, but also anticipate or exceed customer expectations moving forward?
Absolutely. The thing that I referenced before. So infrastructure modernization, your technical infrastructure modernization. That's on everybody's to-do list, but I would just say being very deliberate about making that a priority and doing that in a way that's very geared to what you want to plug and play with is important. I think building your analytic strength, and so that's something that we've been doing, because analytics is going to be the key to whether or not your bank can really infuse personalization in a contextual way into the relationship. And it's not just about the data. So there are investments in data that have to be made. Of course, banks have a lot of data. It's more about investing in how the pipes and how that data is synthesized. And that includes people that we haven't necessarily had in banks before, and talent like data scientists, And those are obvious, but you also need change management and change champions that can affect the ability to weave what the data sciences are doing truly into the business model. And I think that's where probably some of the biggest understanding gaps are for banks today, that you can't just have data, and now you can't just have data scientists. You have to have the change management thinkers and leaders that can help weave that into your business model. And that doesn't have to be a separate set of people, but it does have to be, people that can discernibly, make that happen.
So Liz, how will consumer experiences and engagement become more personalized? And how is Synovus preparing for that future?
You and I talk a lot about this, and I think at the heart of it is, in order to be personal, what does it take, right? It takes me knowing you and knowing you in, a very intimate, way. When it comes to your finances, it means I know, I understand your needs. I understand how your actions maybe conflict or align with those needs. And I'm positioned to talk to you about that. We can call it advice, and that's what we do call it, but we have to be positioned to know our customers. And that's all. And our customers give us insights every day about themselves through their data, through their transactions, through what they're doing and what they're not doing. And as a bank, if we really want to choreograph digital into the relationship, then we have to be able to leverage that data and give it back, to our customers. I love to challenge our teams, about relationship and personalization. And you don't have to see somebody face to face, to be personal. I use the example all the time. I should probably get some kind of payment from Apple, because I use the Apple Watch all the time, and talk about the relationship that I have with my watch. I don't think I cared how many steps I took every day until Apple fed that back to me. Similarly, why are we not thinking the same thing about banking? I think the power of how we can use the data, we don't need to overthink it, right? Why don't we use it to tell our customers about themselves in ways that they're not thinking about, their financial activity today? They monitor, maybe the balance in their checkbook, but there's so much more beyond the balance. And so I think to be personalized, we have to get in there, and we have to get into their day-to-day, life, and sort of, give that information back in the same way that this Apple Watch gives me. And if I don't meet my 3 goals at the end of the day, I'm devastated. We have competition in our house about that. We need to be embedded the same way. That's what it's like to be personal. That's what it's like to have relationship. It means it means being a constant part of, that customer's, that individual's life, day in, day out.
That's a good kind of competition, but it's always good to have one over on your kids if you can beat them at something.
Oh, absolutely.
So Liz, in our partnership, you've exhibited such strong personal leadership and conviction in terms of developing the right kinds of insights for your customers. Why have you found it so important for you to be personally vested and engaged in providing that kind of leadership?
Well, you can tell, obviously, I'm convicted. I'm convicted that without it, that we truly cannot deliver on relationship. And I think that while in general, as an industry, we get it, I still think there's some resistance. I still think we try to partition off, here's what's going to happen in our branches, and here's what's going to happen, in the digital environment. And those that choose to adopt it, great. What I would tell you is we as a bank will not be able to deliver what I think is a wholesome relationship if we don't weave what we've been talking about in there from a digital delivery standpoint, because we don't have the human capacity to be that connected without the help of digital and data. I oversee all the branches within our network. And one of the questions that I've been asked is, how do you really motivate branch teams to, be digital champions? Because in a sense, it takes away what they do. I just think that's a crazy statement. We position, team members within our physical locations to be advisors and to serve our customers. And whether or not they're doing a deposit, which I think is a lot easier to do remotely, should not, devalue them. It just means they can do something different within the four walls of the branch than work on a deposit. What if they had a conversation about that customer's transactional insights? That's a much better way for that customer to walk away with value. So I'm convicted because I think it's so critical. One of the things that I use to maybe convince individuals about the importance and value of digital to our customers, I use the NSF example. So today, if a customer has insufficient funds, if we send them an operational notice overnight, maybe that happens that day overnight, that operational notice gets printed 8 days later, maybe in today's USPS, it gets to the customer. What's happened between day 1 and day 8? You and I both know that if that customer doesn't have the awareness, they've probably created an exponential situation for themselves, where if they're digitally connected, I may be able to warn them before it even happens. Think about the value to that customer. It's not about efficiency for me. Of course, that digital will provide me more efficiency, but that is a small example of the value that I can give, to the customer. Seeing their transactions daily, I may have an insight that I want to deliver them. If they don't walk into the branch for 9 days, I may miss an opportunity to have a great conversation. If I'm connected with them outside of just the branch, network, I have the ability to reach out, to touch, to put something in front of them, whether or not it's something that they want to consume or whether it's not something they want to act on today or not. At least I've done my part in being proactive and presenting that to them. So I think our true relationship is disabled without, without championing those digital, elements. So yes, I'm a mouthpiece. I'm very passionate about it, but I do believe that's what we need to bring to our customers.
Well, one of the things I really appreciate about you, Liz, you've been in banking for 20 years, but you're always thinking about not just what the customer needs, but also what is next, and aspiring to achieve that. And I think that's it's really a testament to your leadership. So one of the things you talked about also was the role of the banker. So say more about that. How should the role of the banker evolve in an environment where there's so much intelligence and data being gathered through digital channels that can potentially be leveraged more effectively in banker interactions?
Yeah, we talk about this all the time. We were talking this morning about some of our, evolving branch strategies and for our teams, how we can continue to refine, the expectations of how they're interacting with our customers. So I think the evolution is, in my eyes, pretty obvious. It's, as a company, we have to enable and put into the hands of our bankers the information about our customers that provoke those next best conversations. Notice I didn't say next best product. It could be a solution. It could be a conversation. And that's very much how we need to think about that relationship. But I think from a banker standpoint, we're going to see a lot more dialogue, and a lot less, I think, register clicking when it comes to what those interactions are in the branch. And so I think the evolution is empowering and enabling our banking teams through, the development of really strong data analytics that we turn into tools that can be distributed and that they can then use on a day in, day out basis to have that dialogue and to take that customer through that next best conversation.
Yeah. Even that lexicon around personalized insights and next best conversation allows kind of the digital and the assisted channel, the banker channel, to really have a role in being able to deliver that.
I think those channels have to be connected more, like we said. I mean, I think we've done I think that where we are on kind of the maturity spectrum is we've taken some transactions and made them omni-channel, I'm giving grace to the industry because connecting all those parts and pieces is really challenging. But I think the next step is not just the transaction, but all the interactions have to be very omni-channel. And if I serve up an insight on our digital experience, how does my banker know that that insight occurred? And so that if the person walks into the branch, I am just as relevant to the dialogue that they're having digitally with Synovus as I am the fact that, I may have said hello and to them last time and seen them out in the community and seen them at a athletic event for their kids. That's great. But wouldn't it also be great if I also knew that they'd had a different touch point through the digital experience that I could carry forward, and really blend that choreography. Yeah. I see it, and this is really corny. I see it as a dance, a beautiful dance of that choreography between the digital and the human comes together. And right now, I think most banks, and we're one of them, we're in the elementary class of that, but I see the future where that comes together really beautifully.
Well, maybe there's still an opportunity for some of us that just weren't good dancers. Do this in the future. But you're right in terms of even understanding that this customer may have a liquidity issue in the future, or maybe they have excess liquidity in their funds and they should be saving. Those are all great things to engage, not just digitally, but also from bankers, particularly those customers that have a branch proclivity as well. And I think you're right in terms of saying this is the next stage. We're doing a lot in digital, but this connected channels is really the next horizon for the industry to take on. Yeah. So from a customer perspective, what do you perceive that they should see as the benefits from this? What kinds of gains and benefits will they see?
Well, I hope they see empowerment more. I mean, again, I go back to the same analogy, but I feel so much more empowered and in control of my health and my health goals when, a watch takes the information that I do every day and speaks it back to me. I'm not tracking everything I do. I'm kind of glad it doesn't track everything I eat. I don't know that I want to know that, but I feel empowered. I didn't have to worry about that. And yet I have an analysis at the end of the day that I can act on and either, go out and wash, rinse, and repeat if it was awesome, or, I can do better, the next day. And so that gives me this empowerment and this control that I didn't feel before. And I feel like we can create the same thing from a financial perspective. I think these things are real enablers. And yes, we're going to be there to partner and advise, hopefully be proactively ahead, of the customer. But it's that sort of empowerment and control that I think the customer can feel in a different way than they may feel today that I think is of real value, to them. And hopefully it makes them super curious and more invested in, their own wellness.
Great point. Liz, you've already been so provocative, but I'll give you one more chance to kind of even extend our thinking further. So what will customers demand from banks and credit unions in the next 3 years that the industry may not be fully prepared for?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the metaverse. And I think, we're definitely not prepared for that because I did get asked a question about the metaverse. And, you and I giggle about it, but it's coming. There's going to be some expectation, there from a metaverse, standpoint. And I do think that there are a lot of banks playing around with just being there. But no, I don't think the metaverse is going to be the center of things. It goes back to what I said before, Jody. I think they're going to expect more contextual connectivity across all the touch points along with the transactional connectivity. So I can start an application online and I can finish it in the branch. That's sort of today's expectation. But to the point I was making earlier, I get an insight online. I'm going to expect that when I go into the branch, I don't have to show that to you, that you know that, and that high tech and high touch is so blended that my relationship feels wholesome. And I think that's what they should expect. I think they're going to expect us to come up with ways to look at, react, and interpret their financial condition that they don't even imagine today. So how are we presenting that information back? What are the maybe tactics that we're suggesting to them to improve financial health and to improve the performance of their value? I think so it's almost like we don't know. I think they're going to just expect us to do more in terms of value and not just service.
This is such an important point. This isn't about just, this is the cool technology today and then like what's coming 3 years later. I think your point around developing deeper relationships based on the data, being able to deliver personalized insights, advice through connected channels, we're still in the early innings of that. This will continue to evolve in terms of its capability, in terms of the execution effectiveness, in terms of the industry's ability to deliver it in a way that customers appreciate, and then for customers to be able to fully capitalize on it, in fact, expect it also of their banks. So there's a long runway left to come. And I think it's a really important point that you were making there, where let's continue to invest in this space, which we know will really make a difference in customers' financial wellness and their well-being.
Well, and Jody, you know how important it is to me. I think I said to your team at one point, I want to sit down and walk through the inventory of insights that we're going to deliver in a very specific way. And I think they looked at me and said, I don't think any, executive has ever asked that before. And I said, well, I think we are at this very important point of how we are humanizing, that digital relationship. So every conversation, every insight to me, needs to be, connected, and it needs to have meaning beyond just, that sort of event in itself. And so we can't undervalue, how important the development, that humanization is.
Well, Liz, I want to thank you. You've given us great personalized insights around your own journey, as well as thoughts around how to compete in this new environment and how to meet and exceed customer needs. Thank you for participating on our podcast, Banking on Innovation. And I know the audience will appreciate your perspective and your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining another episode of Banking on Innovation. Make sure you subscribe to get future podcast episodes, or follow us on Twitter @Personetics or on Personetics.com.